This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Jessica Alderson, co-founder and CEO at SoSynced. Jessica, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Terrific. Thank you for coming, Jessica. All right, PR. What does this acronym mean to you? If you're moving from one country to the other, it's definitely about permanent residency. If you're launching a product, in our today's conversation, a mobile product, it's about public relations and making a splash to grab mobile users' attention. How big of a splash you can do with it? The size of a splash from the meteorite that killed off the dinosaurs in the Mexican Gulf 66 million years ago, or barely noticeable? Today, we have Jessica to share her experience of doing a PR campaign for her app SoSynced. But first, before anything else, as usual on this show, Jessica, please tell us about yourself a bit. What is your background?
Sure. So I actually studied chemistry at university, so quite different to what I'm doing now. And then I worked at an investment bank for 5 years. So yeah, was in finance for a while. Then took a year off to travel, then worked at a flexible office company back in London, and then set up SoSynced. So I've done quite a few things really. But yeah, I run the company with my sister Lou, and it essentially came from a breakup. I moved to Australia at one point with my partner who I'd been with for quite a while. We ended up breaking up. I was leaving my job at the same time. And that's when I took that year to travel. And during that year of traveling, I spent a lot of time delving deep into personality compatibility. And I saw that there were very strong correlations between which personality types were more likely to end up together in terms of romantic relationships and which personality types are, say, less compatible. So yeah, me and my sister took those findings and set up SoSynced, which is our dating app based on personality types.
Well, that's amazing. So from chemistry to banking to app for dating, that's a quite a path. I don't think I can recall any other guest on the show previously who has it so diverse. Let's spend a few minutes just to talk a bit more about your company, your app, SoSynced. So, what are we thinking? What's the how does the app work?
Sure. So you sign up like a normal dating app for at least the first part, and then the second part of the sign up, we have a personality test. Or if you know your personality type already, then you can input it without taking our test. It takes a few minutes to complete. And at the end, you get your personality type. It's 4 letters, so it's based on the 16 personalities framework, which quite a lot of people know already. It's the most popular personality test in the world. So it's like INFJ, ESFP, those personality types. Do you know yours by any chance?
I never. I heard about this testing, but I never bothered to check myself to what personality type I belong to.
Yeah, well, most people do really, really relate. So you should do it, I guess, after
Let's
this
pick it up.
podcast,
Yeah,
maybe.
it's a good idea.
Yeah, and it's it just has lots of different benefits. So yeah, we tell you your personality type. You then go through to the main app, post sign up, and then you can see different users, different people, different profiles, and we let you know about their personality type. And we have essentially a unique matching algorithm based on your personality compatibility. And it's not that we match the same personality types. So if you're an ISFP, your ideal match wouldn't be another ISFP. It's complementary personality types. So it's basically an ideal match is someone who has enough similarities with you so you can form a strong connection, but then enough differences to create a spark and a sense of attraction.
Yeah, as you're explaining it to me right now, it does make a lot of sense to me. And I wonder, how come Tinder doesn't work this way? Or they just don't bother. They want us to swipe left and right. They don't care if we're actually finding somebody of our type to be with. But yeah, if you're taking a smarter approach, if you're actually plugging signs, which you always should do, that's the way of doing it. I'll definitely check out the testing and see to what type I belong to, because I never occurred to me before doing it. Today's topic on the table is PR, or public relations. It's a well-known marketing technique. Getting publicity has been a thing for a while. And of course, it morphed significantly since social media took off. You worked with this channel doing promotion for your app. Do you think PR is an app marketing technique that is applicable to all kinds of apps, or kind of there are exceptions?
Yeah, I don't think it's applicable to all kinds of apps, and I don't think it's applicable to even necessarily startups in the same vertical at different stages. You don't always get a good return on investment or return on time, I guess, depending on how effective at it you are, firstly, or your PR company, and kind of secondly, I guess, your specific outcomes and goals with it. Like, to some extent, it is a branding thing. You don't always see like lots of user acquisition from being featured in an article. I think it depends, exactly what the article says and how you're featured. So it's something that, it's very powerful to us and it's worked very well for us. But I do always say, particularly to early stage startups, this might not be right for you right now. I think when it comes to dating, it's especially powerful because there's a lot of trust that you need when it comes to dating. People are looking for, in our case, because it's based on relationships, their life partner potentially.
Yeah.
That's a really big decision. And, people give up a lot of time to go on dates, right? So you really want to have confidence in the app that you're on. And one of our early advisors said to us, when we were talking about PR, I was kind of questioning about the return on investment. She was like, well, do you really want to be one of those, tacky dating apps that you see on Instagram ads that no one really knows and no one really trusts? And I was like, wow, we definitely don't want to be that.
Of course. Yeah. So I think the kind of a guiding principle for should I go with PR or not could be like, if I'm building a brand, if I see a potential for this thing to be covered by media because it's interesting, it touches a lot of lives, it's meaningful. So I'm sorry to say, if this is another calculator app or notes-taking app, it may not take off at all in PR. It's got to be something about making a significant dent in people's lives, hopefully for the better. In this respect, yeah, there's a potential for PR to pick it up, but of course, no guarantee. But at least you know that this is interesting and not worthy enough for media to pick up in principle, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think a good lens to think of it through is, how does this impact other people, essentially? Because most people are thinking about themselves a lot of the time, or their family or their friends, like their kind of smaller bubble. So, you can end up getting lots of coverage if you're a top celebrity, but I really mean, the royal family, Kim Kardashian, like this kind of level. Even, kind of like famous and inverted commas entrepreneurs are probably not going to get loads of coverage compared to, I guess, kind of more like lifestyle celebrities. So really, journalists as well are always thinking about, oh, how will people relate to this? Is it, great advice that they want to hear? Is it an app that will massively benefit them? Will this app save them time? Will it bring a lot more fun to their lives? Like, there's lots of ways that you can positively impact people's lives. But I think you have to be very clear about that when you're kind of I guess like doing a PR campaign.
I think it's the right moment. I can plug my favorite quote from Kara Swisher, the famous tech journalist. The Silicon Valley has spent a lot of time chasing small ideas with big money. It's time to chase big ideas with big money. So yeah, think about it this way. So now let's assume we have a specific app project in mind, and looking at our competitors, we do see a potential of taping this channel, meaning we're approaching media with the app that we see other apps in this segment has been successful. They've been covered. So we're kind of have the ballpark of understanding will it work or not. Next step, how do we identify the audience we need to approach?
Yeah, so I think firstly, you can kind of brainstorm and use your intuition. So, you probably talk to your user base, you probably have a fairly good idea, hopefully, if you're kind of, I guess like at least a certain way along in your startup journey, you've launched, you've got users. Yeah, I think like the best path to go down is to brainstorm, think about what publications they would be reading, and then think about what kind of things they would want to read. And yeah, it kind of always goes back to how does this benefit them?
Exactly. So, all right, once we know the audience to talk to with our PR campaign, what are my next steps?
Then the next steps, I would say, are to research journalists who've written about competitors. Maybe they're not direct competitors, maybe they're just kind of indirect competitors or more loose competitors for certain publications, and make a list and then start reaching out. And ideally, you don't want a journalist who's written about a similar app, say like yesterday or last week. They're probably not going to write a similar story, particularly for the same publication. But say a journalist has written about a similar app, say 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, that's when it's more ideal. And they're more likely to have, say, like a personal interest. And particularly if their story did well, they'll be excited about, I guess, an app in a similar vertical. But then I would say also you do have to have a really clear USP. Otherwise, they just won't write about you. They're not going to write the same story 6 months later. So you do have to have a really good point of differentiation.
Yeah, that's a great point. You may not realize when you read any publication, your favorite magazine or newspaper, there's people who write these articles. They each of them they have so-called beat, meaning they cover a specific topic. So when you're approaching a publication, you see some people may cover medical stuff, science, education, tech. So when you're approaching journalists, you just need to make sure that this particular author, the reporter, covers technology, apps. You will realize that, judging by their articles written previously for similar apps, but just understand that there's a kind of a there's a lineup of probably there's a queue of apps he or she's covering on a regular basis. She obviously check out the App Store for every once in a while. If nobody's pitching her and him, probably that's a very rare case. I think they've been bombarded pretty heavily by pitches, but sometimes you should go to the App Store, check what's great for this week, and this is the next step to cover.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. When I say loose competitors, I do mean very broad. So consumer tech, that's a very kind of broad bucket. But, if a journalist is regularly writing about consumer tech companies, there's a good chance that they will want to write about you as long as you pitch in the right way and find an interesting angle.
Now, both short and long term, what should be my strategy for engaging with reporters and online publications in general?
Yeah, I think a good point to think about is to empathize with them and understand how busy they are. So, just be pretty brief in how you reach out. I usually send probably 2 to 3 paragraphs, like kind of background, why they should read the rest of the email. Like, I say we've been featured in XYZ to essentially give some social proof. And then, yeah, just like literally a few sentences of the pitch and, potentially why they would want to write about us and our idea. And then, as you develop relationships, then journalists will start reaching out to you. And then I guess, you have a kind of back and forth dialogue. But yeah, the kind of initial pitch, and really, I guess, every interaction to some extent, just kind of like understand how busy they are. And I don't really follow up, to be honest. I know this, like lots of salespeople say to follow up all the time. And like, I've shared my thoughts, I've had an interaction with them, they've replied, I'm not going to follow up and be like, oh, when's the article getting published? When's the article getting published? Because often they don't know. They'll send it to an editor, and then the editor will have a, publishing timeline, but that might change, and they'll probably already be writing their next piece. So to have you emailing them and be like, oh, when's it coming? They don't know. They'll have to email someone else, wait for a reply. They might have to chase. It's kind of just not very efficient. So, you might have an interaction with a journalist, like quite an in-depth one, and the article never gets published. You kind of just have to take it with a pinch of salt and move on and just like pursue new opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. They are as busy as you are, probably even more. Why you're following them up is to make sure that actually paid attention to your email, because just like you check out your email on a daily basis throughout the week, and all those emails that were opened but never replied, waiting for Friday to finally reply to those emails. Maybe the same situation with the reporter trying to pitch your app. He or she took a glance at his or her inbox, saw your email, but never had a really chance to open the email, paid attention, or maybe it's just stuck in the middle. It's just waiting to be, finished and sent to you back. So your reminder is just to make sure you're still on the radar. But yeah, you can't do it forever,
I guess,
right?
Yeah, I guess I don't follow up, once I've had an interaction, once they've been like, thank you so much for this, then I'm like, okay, interaction done. If the article gets published, great. If it doesn't, then, I've kind of done what I have to, I've done all I can, essentially.
Exactly. Can you share some signs of how you can judge that your PR campaign is actually successful? I assume we're not talking about the number of downloads we're getting from the press release. That's just not feasible, not possible to expect. But what are the signs of success?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, some articles we do get a lot of downloads from, some we don't. So it is kind of hard to measure depending on the type of mention you get. I would say it's, I guess measuring PR is just less quantitative. It's not that accurate in terms of like, how you measure the success of PR. One, I don't know if you'd call it a metric, but one signal I like to look out for is when I know friends say, they're talking about it, and then people are like, oh, yeah, I've seen So Synced. I've read about it quite a lot. Or quite a lot of the time people will say to me when I'm explaining about it, oh yeah, do you do press? Because I think I've read about you before. And I'm like, yeah, we are regularly featured in quite a lot of publications. So to hear that does show, okay, it is working, like the name is getting out there. And when you kind of spark that fire, say people read about you and then they talk to a friend, maybe have an app user who mentions So Synced and they've already read about us, that's when it really makes a difference. I guess like quite a few different touch points. So I'd say PR is most powerful, like in conjunction with other forms of user acquisition, even if it is, quite simply like word of mouth.
So was a PR campaign part of the toolbox to launch the app, or is it something you can use just down the road when the app is on the App Store? you got some initial recognition from PR campaign. You're the first one. Do you think there's a sense to go back to the PR campaign again and just do more outreaches to media?
Yeah, definitely. As long as you've got an interesting angle, and it really depends on the vertical that you're in and your industry. For us, we do a lot of, I guess, kind of press around relationship advice and advice around friendships, like essentially press to do with meaningful connections, or like dating more broadly. So as long as you kind of find your angle, and hopefully it's something that is recurring, it's not like, kind of one story and that's it. You kind of like need a theme that you can, I guess, be involved in. And actually for our launch, we didn't get much press coverage. We tried, but it just like didn't really work, to be honest, in the UK or the US. But we were persistent and got there eventually.
Cool. Any final tips to sum it all up?
I mean, I would say persistence is really key. Like the first kind of, I guess, batch of outreaches I did, I wrote to probably 100 or 150. It was thereabouts journalists. It was ahead of Valentine's Day.
Oh.
And I got like one reply. And it was like, fortunately we were featured in that publication, but it took a long time. It took, say, like a week of, pretty much working on it full time, finding the contacts, personalizing the emails, things like that. But it's kind of like this snowball effect. As soon as you start getting featured in publications, you can then say to journalists you're reaching out to, oh, we've been featured in the Wall Street Journal and Forbes and Fortune and Business Insider. And then they're like, oh, this isn't some kind of random person just, launching an app and seeing how it goes and just kind of taking a chance. They're like, okay, these people are serious about this, and other publications are taking them seriously. So I will too, like essentially, social proof.
Yeah, this is great. So once you manage to kind of turn a few heads at your app from big media, there's the chances of getting more and more goes progressively up because you're getting a social proof. It's like they're definitely checking each other all the time, what is being covered, what's popular. These publications are on each other's radar all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm not reaching out to 100 journalists now and getting one reply. That would not be ideal. That's kind of what you might have to do in the early stages, but it definitely gets better.
Cool. Jessica, having this experience of running your business for more than 2 years by now, what would you like to change about digital marketing the most?
Yeah. So in terms of digital marketing, do you mean digital ads or just like marketing more broadly?
Marketing in a broad sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure there's really anything that I would change. Like I now think there are just really great tools, where you can create great marketing content quickly. There's like a variety of platforms. So yeah, I mean, I guess, it'd be great if if acquisition costs were lower, that would kind of be a nice thing. But I guess I kind of just think of it as it is what it is, and you kind of have to work with like certain constraints, but that's what makes it fun.
But let's take a slightly different angle. What was the hardest part? You wish you had more tools under your fingertips, or any extra help, more information being available?
Yeah, I mean, I guess competitor benchmarks would be great. I think that's not so easy to find in terms of marketing. We have good benchmarks on like kind of the product side for, retention, things like that. But it's quite hard to find competitor benchmarks for specific like marketing channels. So I guess like more transparency around that would definitely be helpful.
Got you. All right. We've covered the topic on the table, and this is the first part of the show, and we're transitioning to the second one, where I'm taking a chance to ask every guest who comes on the show just a few quick questions, because I do want to let my audience know people who are coming on the show a little bit better. So here we go. What smartphone do you have now? Have you been switching between these two platforms or one side all the time?
Yes, so I have an iPhone, and I've had an iPhone for, I guess, as long as I can remember, really. Or I've never had an Android phone. I guess I don't really overthink it. It's just, I have it. It works really well for me. I don't overanalyze it. It's kind of, I guess, how I run like quite a lot of areas of my life. And like, yeah, that's great. Let's not overthink it, really.
Gotcha. All right. Before the iPhone, before, smartphones as we know them now, what is the first mobile phone, the one you could put in your pocket?
Yeah, that was a Nokia 3310, which I think is, one of the most classic
Classic, of
first
course.
phones, right? Yeah, so that was my first phone with like Snake, and
Snake,
obviously just text messaging, no photos. That was a long time before photos.
phone calls, SMS, and Snake. That's it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was it. And 10p text messages as well. I remember
Oh
that.
yeah, right. So back to present. Imagine you've left your iPhone at home for whatever reason. You're out. What is the most missing feature for you?
For me, I'm terrible with directions, so it would be Google Maps. I'd probably like get out of the front door and be like, is it left? Is it right? Like, where do I go? It would be a disaster. And I think back to the times before Google Maps, I remember like printing out directions from a printer and kind of like annotating them and stuff like that. So yeah, Google Maps has definitely changed my life and made it better.
Gotcha, Jessica. I think in a few more hundred episodes, I will be able to write a scientific paper claiming that Google Maps became part of our brain. I mean, for real, so many guests name the same app. It's just
Yeah.
you just take it for granted. And yeah, when it's not in your pocket, you can just put up your map and see where you're going, how long it's going to take, any problems on the way with the public transportation, etc. You just take it as granted.
Yeah, it's so true. Technology becomes part of our life so quickly, and it's hard to remember how we existed without it. So yeah, it's kind of, I think, nice to take a step back sometimes and just be grateful for it, really.
Exactly. Speaking of technology on the phone, if you can think of anything, hardware, software with your iPhone, you wish would be either better or some new feature which is not there at the moment, what would be that feature for you?
Yeah, I would love like a kind of centralized app that deals with personal admin, or maybe even company admin, two different sections of the app that, you connect it to a few things. I don't know if it's, probably like your bank account, like say, I want to have like a dental checkup every 6 months, that kind of thing. And then it automatically connects to other systems and kind of just books it in for you. I really don't love personal admin. So anything that can kind of take that away would be very nice for me.
Got you. Okay, before I let you go, very, very final question. How can people get in touch with you and get more information about what you do?
Sure. So we have a website, www.sosyncd.com. That's SOSYNCD. So sync without the E. And then we're present on all the major social media channels, Instagram @SoSync, same with Twitter, same with TikTok. And yeah, people can follow me personally as well. I have Twitter. But yeah, we're always keen to chat to people. It's obviously a very personal business that we have. And yeah, we're always very excited to hear feedback.
This is great. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show, spending time with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Jessica Alderson, co-founder and CEO at SoSynced. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe and you will be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.